I don't know if President William Ruto means it, because he said so many things and I can't locate him these days, because the things he said during election and the things he's doing now are two different things. I regard no part of Africa as being foreign to me, because Africa, all of it, belongs to me and I belong to Africa. It is a humbling honor to be invited to address the launch of the prestigious Pan African Institute, which is targeted at creating intellectual collaboration and unity amongst the people of the continent. As we have seen over the decades, there is no way Euro-American is going to fund an intellectual project that will see Africa truly become intellectually sovereign. A truly sovereign Africa is a threat to the imperialist establishment that continue to determine the agenda and control of our resources. It is also inspiring to see that our esteemed Prof. Lumumba and those who are joining him in this initiative have chosen our continent, and Kenya in particular, to establish an intellectual research and knowledge institution. Accordingly, our first duty is to call on sons and daughters of the continent, both based here and in the diaspora, to jealously fund this institute and ensure that it create and charts a unique Africa based on an original thought, because we have a duty to chart our own intellectual path. We are also inspired by the fact that the Institute concept of Pan Africanism include all people of African descent. That is, those in the continent, the Americas, Caribbean islands, Europe, and Asia. This is because wherever they are found, people who look like you and me continue to be treated as an inferior race. When you see a black person, when you see an African person, everywhere else in the continent, in the diaspora, and all over the world, please be kind to African people, for because they are a hated nation. Wherever they are being enslaved, they are being tortured, they are being harassed. No one shows them love. But you, as an African who claim to be a Pan-Africanist, you have a responsibility to show fellow Africans love and care. The violent, genocidal, and catastrophic transatlantic slave trade and colonialism are the historical twin towers that plug the humanity of Africans into the dark night, which to this day seem to have no end in sight. The image of the African as a black and subhuman was forged through massive and violent enslavement of millions of African people sold in the Americas as properties of white colonial settlers. In the coastal and mainland villages of West Africa, through the gun, the dogs, and the spears, African communities were plundered, captured against their will, and chained like animals. At the ports of Ghana, those chained, naked, and malnourished bodies of men, women, and children were scaled, measured, and sold for gold, silver, or livestock. They were put in those gigantic ships that crossed thousands of kilometers of the massive body of violent and cold waters of the Atlantic Ocean. Millions will not survive the dangerous voyages on sea. They will die of disease, starvation, or pure mental illness. Many will be offloaded alive, thrown into the deep waters to ease navigation during the storms of the violent seas. It is on those cold Atlantic Ocean's waters, deep in the bottom of the ocean, that many carcasses of African people, their bones lay rotten in chains and swallowed by the sea. Those who survived and on arrival in the Americas were forced to work in the different plantations of white men. From the voyage ships to the plantation, the image of an inferior African was being constructed through brutal force. Then began the violent colonial conquest for settlement aimed at our natural resources that defined our native continent. The white man sought to rule Africa and here designed a system of racial segregation, racial humiliation, racial abuse that lasted for many centuries. The colony and the plantation, with the voyage slave ships in the middle, were the perfect technologies of recreating the African into a subservient being whose only survival in the modern world must always be through white tutelage, supervision, and approval. The transatlantic slave trade, colonial conquest, and colonial rule are responsible for the zombification of the African soul and its intellectual damnification and the psychotic condition where Africa and its people cannot handle their affairs without white supervision. As both an intellectual project and a program of revolutionary change, Pan-Africanism is first the recognition of this terrible history, which by all definition remains a world history that has cast the African into a global identity of inferiority amongst people of the world. Pan-Africanism is never forgotten noise of the painful cries of those captured slaves whose black bodies were swallowed by the Atlantic Ocean from the slave ships. It is the agonizing cry from the brutal violence suffered by the black slaves in the sugar, cotton, and corn plantations from Georgia to Sao Paulo. Pan-Africanism is also the resounding victory from the theater of the Haitian Revolution from 1781 to 1804, led by the greatest descendant of our continent, Toussaint Louverture. Together with his patrons, they bravely led the first and only successful slave revolution in human history, defeating a combined European force commanded by a France Napoleon Bonaparte. It is the bravery of those African former slaves who will define citizenship on a racial definition of blackness, declaring that Haiti belongs to black people regardless of the color of their skin. I don't know if President William Ruto means it, because he said so many things and I can't locate him these days, because the things he said during election and the things he's doing now are two different things. I don't know, because I heard him saying we need to do away with the dollar and build our own currency, but his actions are not speaking to anything of doing away with the dollar. The latest being putting a red carpet for a murderer, a person who killed the Kenyan people, coming into this country, receiving a red carpet and being saluted by our own army. This is not a Kenyan army, it's not a colonialist army. The Kenyan army is a product of the Mau Mau rebellion, and those who killed our people in the Mau Mau rebellion cannot be saluted by the same army of the children of those who were killed during Mau Mau rebellion. We have a duty to stay true to the cause. We have a duty to remind the king and Britain of what they did to us. Indeed, he shows no remorse. He says this was bad, it shouldn't have happened. But he runs short of, I apologize. I am sorry. Tell President Ruto that the people of Palestine are what Mau Mau was. Tell President Ruto that the people of South Africa are what Palestinian people are today. Where our land that get encroached, where our land just get taken and we get killed on our own land, we get tortured on our own land, we get imprisoned on our own land. When we fight, they say we are terrorists. This Nelson Mandela you celebrate, for 27 years, he was in prison because he was a terrorist. What crime did he commit, which the Palestinians are not committing? His crime was to fight for the liberation of the people of South Africa and the oppressed world all over, including the people of Palestine. It can't be correct that President Ruto, knowing the history of this country and the history of South Africa, comes and tells us that it's with Israelites. Our war is not on Jewish people. Our war is not on pregnant women, Jewish pregnant women. Our war is not on Jewish children. Our war is against a Zionist apartheid state of Israel, and that's what we are fighting. At the age of 9 years, the Boers walked into my house and turned everything upside down, stripped my mother naked. When I see what those children of Palestine are going through, I can immediately relate that this is what apartheid looks like. We cannot be Pan-Africanist if we can't associate with the oppressed nation. Our Pan-Africanism is based on the basis that we are an oppressed nation ourselves. And everywhere else where we see an oppressed person, that person is our sister, that person is our mother, that person is our father, because we are not free until the whole world is free from imperialism and colonialism. I don't know if you'll regret inviting me after this. But my problem is that I tell my truth as is. And I say it to authorities without fear or favor. Till today, no one has ever sued me legally successful. Till today, no one has imprisoned me. Because you can't imprison or sue the truth. The truth will always prevail. Comrades, we must make sure that as we live here, our sympathy is with the oppressed people. Look at Cuba. Its crime was to choose a different economic system to what America has chosen. And then they are under more than 60 years of economic embargo. What crime did the people of Western Sahara commit against Morocco? We are at the center of speaking the truth as a Pan-Africanist institute because we've got the ear of the continent and the diaspora and the whole world.
Listen.